Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to tackle a question that's been on everyone's mind. Is do-it-yourself painting really cheaper than hiring a professional painter? I'm going to break down the costs on the screen and let's see if this DIY dream is even worth the hassle. So just to give you some background if you're new to the channel, my name is James. I work as the main content creator for The Paint People. I work as the primary color consultant, but I also worked as a professional painter, my family business for well over a decade. I definitely have some insight when it comes to costs in the painting business. Today's sponsor is us. ThePaintPeople.com is your go-to destination for quality paint and paint supplies. We're more than just a paint store. We are your partner in bringing color to life. Visit our website today and discover a world of colors, quality, and convenience. And as a thank you for supporting us on YouTube, use coupon code JAMES5 for 5% off your order. So I want to start with the DIY costs of what you will have to spend out of your own pocket to do the project yourself. When considering DIY painting, there are several costs to factor in. Obviously, the first notable one would be paint, and the quality and quantity of paint you need will vary depending on the size of your project. And if you want something that will last, you probably need to go with more premium paint. Then of course you have the equipment to apply the paint. So you'll need brushes, rollers, drop cloths, probably things like painter's tape, extension poles, trays, liners perhaps. And then for repairs, you probably need some spackling, some plaster, some caulking, and then the tools to apply all that as well. So all other supplies, like considering the cost of primer you might need, putty, and any other necessary supplies. But I think the biggest cost that people don't necessarily take into consideration is your time. Remember, DIY projects, they take time and effort. And if you're not a skilled painter, if you haven't done it regularly, it might take longer than you anticipate. And time is money, friend. It's an opportunity cost. If you're spending an entire week painting the first floor of your home, that is a week's worth of potential pay at your job that you're essentially forfeiting just so you can paint your home. Now, when it comes to professional painters, they tend to charge based on several different factors. The first one, of course, is the scope of the work, the project size. Obviously, larger projects will cost more, so the bigger the project, the more money you're probably gonna have to fork out. The second cost is the paint quality. So the painter might stick with a certain grade of paint, but if you want something a little higher quality, that cost will of course be transferred onto you, which can increase the overall price. Another thing that people charge for and account for is prep work. So the amount of prep work involved, such as patching holes or sanding surfaces, this of course will affect the price. Sometimes location is factored in. So labor costs can actually vary depending on your geographic location. And if you're set on a really reputable company that has to travel quite a distance to get to you, that also might be added into the cost as well. And sometimes speed of the work can affect the cost. You might have one company that works twice as fast as another because they have double the painters working. So keep that in mind as well. So let's compare some actual numbers when it comes to DIY versus professional painters. So let's start with a small project like a powder room. And here's the cost if you did it yourself, just the materials and the paint and all that. And just for fun, here's the average wage that someone might make in one day, which is money you could. Small project, still kind of a good deal. So for really small projects, DIY actually seems like a decent deal because oftentimes companies will have a minimum charge that they'll apply to all their projects, just so that they're not coming in to paint one door or something like that. Now things change a bit when we get to a medium-sized project. Let's say instead of a powder room, we're painting a small bachelor apartment. Here's what it might cost for a company to do it themselves versus what you would spend on materials and supplies and paint. And let's say you've painted before, but you're not a super expert. Maybe it takes you 3 days to do it. Okay, now we're getting a little interesting here. And then finally, let's look at a larger project, painting an entire house. This is what you might spend in your materials, your paint and all that. And let's say it takes you 2 weeks to do it. Now we're talking. So beyond the cost, there are other factors to consider when deciding whether to DIY or hire a pro. First is your skill level. If you're not a skilled painter, you might end up spending more time and money on things like mistakes. So all those numbers we talked about, in some cases, you might have to double them to sort of compensate. Then of course you have time constraints. Do you actually have the time to complete the project properly yourself? If you do have a full-time job that you can't miss out on, when are you gonna do it? On the weekends? At night? Before work? Those are only small little pockets of time, and to start and stop a painting project is probably the worst idea you can do because it's gonna add a ton of extra prep time and cleanup. Starting and stopping, not great. And then of course, quality. Professional painters often have the experience and the equipment to achieve a higher quality finish. A great company will invest in great equipment, which will give you a great finish, so you don't have to worry about it. And then of course, stress level. DIY painting can be super stressful, especially if you're not confident in your abilities, because we're not machines. Ultimately, the decision of whether to DIY or hire a professional depends on your individual circumstances. If you're a skilled painter with plenty of time, DIY might be the cost-effective option. However, if you're short on time or you lack the skills, hiring a pro might just be the better choice in all situations. Based on my feelings and experiences, as the project gets bigger, that's when DIY becomes much harder to justify. Remember, a well-painted room can add value to your home, so it's important to choose the option that will give you the best results and the least amount of headache. Cheers.